Hey guys, welcome to the Titanium Vault. I'm your host, RJ Bates. Today I'm sitting down with Jason Perro. How you doing, man?
I'm great, RJ. How are you?
Oh man, just trying to make it through another day of this quarantine lockdown lifestyle right now. You and I were kind of chatting before we got on, and I'm interested to get your take on, the impact that COVID-19's had on your business. But for the people that don't know you, briefly kind of give a rundown of what it is that you do in real estate investing.
Yep. So my wife and I own. We're mainly buy and hold. We've been buying real estate in Erie, Pennsylvania, and surrounding areas since 2001. Two-thirds of our portfolio is just my wife and I, stuff that we own, just together, and then a third of it is stuff that we've syndicated over the last year and a half, 2 years.
Okay.
So kind of a nice mix of property, everything from single-family homes up to couple hundred unit complexes.
Gotcha. So how did you get your start in buy and hold real estate?
So that's all we ever knew. So when we started out and looked at people that were in real estate, we heard that people that have money have real estate, and when we're young and a few years out of college, didn't have money, and that's where we wanted to go. We just thought, hey, you buy some rental properties, hold on to it, and over time the tenants will pay they'll pay the mortgage down,
Right.
and at the end of this you'll have a nice little savings account, and so I didn't know any different, and then later on we learned about all these other strategies, but that always seemed like the most logical path to me, because good economic times, bad economic times, you always have cash flow coming in, and if you don't have cash flow, at least you have a hard asset,
Right.
which is worth something.
It's so funny. I get to, I'm honored to be able to interview investors from across the country and hear how everybody got started. And I always think it's so funny because everybody's answer about how did you get started is pretty unanimous. It's like, well, I didn't know any better. So this is
Yeah,
where I
yeah,
found, this is what I knew, and this is where I found my niche. And that, it doesn't matter if you're a wholesaler, flipper, buy and hold. So you said, you didn't have a whole lot of money, and you and your wife, this is what y'all figured was the best path for y'all. This is what
yeah.
you heard to do. So how did you find properties if you didn't have a whole lot of money backing you?
Sure. At the time, and we both had, our first property, she was still in college, finishing up her senior year. I had been working, had a sales job. We both got into medical sales, and so we had. She was a pharmaceutical rep, and I was a medical device sales rep, and we made good money. We were still young, so we started saving everything we could, and it was networking. We'd talk to a family friend who knew somebody that had rental properties, and everybody, of course, would try and talk you out of it. But as I got to meet these people, and they were where I wanted to go. And I thought it was such a cool thing that, oh man, you have these rental properties, and whether it was, most of the people I met early on, it was just a extra income.
Right.
And it wasn't until several years in that I met people that actually had enough that did it for a living and saw that was possible. And so I just, it was just, trying to meet people, whether it was like somebody who had posted an ad in the newspaper, like they used to do that, where they were, selling property, and you'd call a number and they'd say, oh, I got some property for sale. And just getting to meet and know people like that. That was it. It was just a simple thing, because everybody knows somebody who has a rental property. And
Right.
that was,
We probably got a couple of young millennials that are like, you mean like the ads that they post on the websites, like,
yeah, no, it was an actual
okay, man, I
paper.
remember those days back in the day too. So, and it's funny because I remember, before I got into real estate investing, and I would talk to people that owned a couple of properties, and just remembering how amazing that seemed. Like, man,
Yeah,
you own like 5 houses, and now that I'm in it, it's like it's a lot easier than it actually seemed. It seemed
right.
unattainable back then. So you guys, you are saving up, you start buying properties.
Yeah.
At what point in time did you kind of make the decision that, hey, this is probably what I want to do for my career?
Yeah. So early on, our goal was to buy enough to be able to, like, quote unquote, retire or leave
Right.
our day job. And again, the goals kept changing. This is like before kids, and then, kept, getting better and better day jobs. So, we were making more income and we lived really cheap early on, but, we knew that was what we wanted to do. But I kept moving the goalposts. It was, oh, once I get this many, I'll quit. Once I get this many, I'll quit. And so ultimately it came down to, like, in 2012, I left my day job. We built up to just about under 300 units. It was like 292 units or something. But, we had built, we had hired the property managers, maintenance people, all that stuff. But it just started getting out of hand. I mean, it's just hard to do things and do them well when you're balancing, a really demanding day job along with, the demands of running a rental property business. So, I knew early on I wanted to work for myself, knew I didn't want to work, for somebody else for the rest of my life. So the goals were pretty clear early on, but kind of fumbled our way through, that first 10, 11 years to get to where we were able to,
that's an amazing amount of patience, though. I mean, to wait until you get to 300 units. I mean, I don't know about you. For anybody that listens to my podcast, they all know my story. It took me about, 3 deals before I was like, hey, I'm all in. This is what I'm doing for the rest of my life.
We did it the old fashioned way where, we were saving, because we didn't know any different. Like,
right.
We saved up money for down payments. And I'm like, how the heck would anybody have, be able to go out and buy a 100 unit or a 200 unit and things like that. So we kept, saving our money, building up equity, did a couple strategic refinances. I didn't know the first thing for the longest time about hard money. I didn't know anything about partners, syndications. And so, when we quit our date, she left her job in 2010, myself in 2012. Then we started going to the next level with hard money and partners. And some people, it's maybe, a reverse strategy. I think a lot of people start out that way, but I think for us, it allowed us to partner up a little bit more confidently, knowing that, hey, look, we already have the strong base of property, a strong base of income coming in. If this new deal doesn't go exactly as planned, I don't need it to eat. And so that would allow us to maybe kind of approach it in a more confident way and give our investors a little bit more confidence. And then same thing with the syndications. It's like, hey, here's just another level. And it wasn't like I needed that to live on.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm going to go out on a limb and say the majority of my listeners are people that have probably gotten into real estate investing within the last, probably 5 or 6 years, right?
Yeah.
And the path that you're taught nowadays is, leverage other people's money, whether it's hard money, private money, anywhere you can. You're not putting any of your own money in.
Yeah.
You came from this much different path. And I think that's probably one of the top questions that I get is, well, I'm not confident in going out and using somebody else's money when I haven't done it yet myself. Yeah. I mean, you had built such a strong portfolio. When you finally quit that job and now you're at 300 units and you're full-time in it, I mean, talk about the change in just mindset and your day-to-day activities within your business, because I'm sure that you had been doing it for 10 or 11 years. I mean, that's a big change to now, hey, I'm full-time in this. What was that process like?
Yeah, I mean, it was a several-year process to really get comfortable with myself as a say a leader or business owner, but being able to hire and fire people well. And I think that early on it was that adjustment of, well, I had all these people working for me and now I'm here, now, and instead of just a phone call, I'm actually here and in it every day. So that was like a huge mental adjustment. And then, just keep growing and taking care of our initial, our original portfolio. I mean, it was a several year adjustment, to be honest. I mean, we kept growing, but, I had to really like figure out how to be a better business owner and hire people better and hire better people and how to manage better and all of those types of things, how to systematize our business. We just didn't stop at 300 units, we're more than triple that size now.
Mm-hmm.
and figuring all of those things out. So it was, to say it was easy would be, I mean, it was hard. We struggled through, mentally, financially, emotionally, just how do we make this thing work? Because it wasn't as easy as just like, hey, I quit my job and this is going to be great. It was like, I quit my job. Shit. Now what? You know what I mean? Like,
Did you struggle with time management?
What's that?
Did you struggle with time management when you first quit? I know that
Yeah,
sounds like an oxymoron, but it's like you were so used to, hey, I only have so many hours in a day due to my job. And then all
yeah,
of a sudden it's like, I have 24 hours, 7 days a week. And
yeah,
there's so many things that you want to do as like a visionary or the
yeah,
CEO. Did you kind of
yeah.
struggle with where maybe your time was focused on?
I did. I mean, it was like, and again, it's the old saying of working on the business and not in the business, but
Yeah.
that really takes time to figure that out. And it's okay to, I think it's okay to struggle with that, because then you really realize what's important and where your time is best spent. I mean, um, some people, just get it right away. And I admire that ability to say, oh, I just work on my business. They're 22 years old, and that's awesome. I mean, I wish I had that, 20 years ago in my case, but we all kind of go at our own pace. And I think for me so the time management of like, yeah, it's okay for me to like, I need to understand what's going on in the business, but I have to work on the business. And so now, it becomes much more of a, I will jump in the minutia when it's required, where, before our call, I had to have a long conversation with one of my property managers about a situation they were dealing with. So it's not necessarily me working on the business, but was providing some coaching and some insight and action, some
Mm-hmm.
steps that they had to take. But early on it would be like, I'd have people working for me, but I would also want to be involved in a lot of that
Right.
stuff. And now, we just figured out, but I've gotten people that thrive in creating systems and following systems and having processes. And so we've gotten, not the people before, they were all fine, but they weren't really growth oriented, and they weren't really along to help grow themselves, and if they can
Yep.
grow themselves, they can help grow our business, and all of our goals and values are aligned properly. So that was a long answer, but
Yeah, no, and some of the feedback that I've heard from people, and the reason why I wanted to touch base on this is because I know there's a lot of people out there that are either wholesaling or buying rentals or flipping a house here or there, and they're trying to build up their cash reserves before they quit that job, right? Because they're
yeah,
so used to that job paying the bills. Well, one thing that you have to understand is that if you're used to your job providing you, you know, finances and capital, and that's what's supporting you, it's also supporting you in structure within your
yeah,
life. And then when you become a full-time entrepreneur, it can be very daunting when suddenly it's now there's not somebody there to tell you where to
yeah,
be, when to be, what to do.
yeah,
And I know that sounds crazy, because like for you, you could have been, you were doing this for 11 years,
yeah,
12 years,
yeah,
and then all of a sudden it's like, now what?
yeah,
It's like, now you got to get in it and you want to grow it and you're so excited, and it's very hard. And I still struggle with it from time to
yeah.
time, where it's like I have so many different ideas and it's like, what am I supposed to focus on today?
Right.
And it's definitely one of those topics that, majority of real estate investors say they struggle with.
Yeah.
So once you talk about your team, let's kind of jump into today, what the team looks like. I know you have a property manager, but who else is on the team and what does
Yeah.
that look like?
So yeah, we have, a handful of property managers, so we have about 850 units. Right now I sold some things, and we're adding in the next month, we're adding another 160. So we're going to be, a little over 1,000 units
Right.
at, you know, by the end of May, basically. And so we have site managers at two different portfolios, um, you know, dedicated maintenance staff at those two larger sites. And then I've got a series of maintenance guys and office staff for everything else. And so we have, a main office manager / business manager. Our main property manager is really came in to be groomed to be, our asset manager / operations manager. And so, he not only does a lot of the day-to-day property management, or most of it, but he also manages those particular site managers and helps build our processes and systems. And so I did that by design, because I finally realized, like, hey, I give up. There's stuff that I'm not good at that I need. We need people that are better than me at
Right.
this stuff. And so so there's that, and we've because we do like to self-manage. I mean, we have our list of subcontractors and things like that, but we have quite a few maintenance guys on staff. You know, they handle everything from, you know, lawn care, you know, snow removal, all this kind of stuff. So, so it's hard to, you know, for a long time it was hard to manage in-house because you're building a company, you know, you're building a system. But once I realized that, you know, we actually needed a system in place and follow these, you know, it just, you know, you just kind of have to eat crap for a little bit to, you know, when you've done it maybe wrong or you haven't optimized it for a while, you know, you really need to just to kind of sit on your hands, let these people do what they do and be patient with the process of building, you know, building a better machine.
Right. So you brought up that, you know, you have a couple of assets that you've syndicated.
Yeah.
At what point in time did you kind of add that to your tool belt, and what was that
Yeah.
process like?
So, you know, like with a lot of things, I knew it existed for a long time. I think I probably started reading about syndication in the late 2000s, like 07, 08. Kind of understood it at the time, but in my mind, I had this mental block of like, man, why would I want partners? You know, why do I want all these hands in the cookie jar? And I didn't
Right.
fully understand how it worked. And I just thought it was a partnership, you know, and I always liked the control. I always liked being able to run our deals, you know, not knowing the whole while that that's, you know, what it would, you know, what it was. But probably about 4 years ago, met a gentleman who became our co-partner, our co-GP in our syndications. He had a wide business background in other areas, farming, you know, food production, like trucking, all these different things. And he had, they had sold a company for a substantial amount of money about 12, 13 years ago. And they created a syndication, but it was all within their family of some really nice real estate in Sarasota. And so over a period of a few years, you know, we kept talking, building our friendship. You know, we knew that we wanted to, you know, to partner up in something. Just didn't know what it looked like. And a few years back, I was on a podcast. The gentleman that put the podcast on invited myself and about a dozen others to his house and said, "Hey, I'm putting together this mastermind. You want to come be, you know, part of the first one and see how it goes." And at that group, you know, like I said, there was about a dozen of us, a few more, you know, including, you know, him and his wife and his brother and things like that. But we, like, I'm sitting in a room with people and I'm, you know, trying to figure out what's next. I know that I've been toying around with the syndication idea, and it was just, you know, it really speaks to the power of the mastermind. I had, you know, some people looking at me like, "Oh my gosh, you've got all these units and no partners." And I'm looking at them like, "Wow, you have all these units that you've syndicated." And just somebody said one thing that at that meeting, and I went home and I said, "All right, I got it." Like it clicked in my brain. And then like 2 months later, you know, our first large deal to raise capital for came along, and it was, you know, it was scary, you know, it was exciting, but had never raised, you know, money from like on that scale before. You know, we've done a lot of one-on-one, you know, like part types of things, but nothing on in the, you know, along that scope or size. So
Right.
did it, was a lot easier, you know, than we expected. Another deal came along, just, you know, but it was all just something that somebody said at that one like Saturday morning. And I'm like, all right, clicked in my brain. Why have I been like so stupid and not thinking
Right.
about this in the proper way, you know? And then from there, it just, you know, it's been a nice, you know, addition to our portfolio.
Yeah, man. You know, I've talked about how masterminds have changed my life, and it's so funny, man. Everything that you just said there, it's like, why do I do a podcast? Well, because it's, you know, I did a couple of podcasts. They opened up opportunities to me, and the second podcast I ever did was with Don Costa, and then Don Costa invited me to Fresno, California, to his first ever mastermind. And
That's
then
great.
from there, I met my largest private money lender at Don Costa's mastermind. So it's like the correlations of our stories is so funny, and that's why I do a podcast now.
Yeah.
That's why I own a mastermind now, because it's just I saw the impact of these events taking place, and they changed my life. It changed your life, obviously. You know, you were already on a path of success, but now this just opens it up where, you know, you can do so much more, so much quicker.
Yeah.
And it's a testament to both being on podcasts, putting yourself out there, just sharing your journey. You know, I mean, That's all you were doing, is just
Right.
talking about what you were doing. And it opened up, yourself to other opportunities. And it's funny because most of the time we do podcasts, we think it's because it's going to be somebody listening to the podcast, but it could be like the other host, the other guest, who knows what it's going to be.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. So now, how many deals have you syndicated since that moment?
So we've completed 2 large syndications, and then we're closing our third in the next month here. So
Gotcha.
and that's all stuff that local to Erie, Pennsylvania. I've resisted the urge to do too much of it,
Mm-hmm.
and that's 3 deals in a year and a half. I'd rather put
These
it.
are large deals, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
and honestly, you're at a place right now where I'm making assumptions, but you're probably not wanting to grow too rapidly. You're just wanting to make sure you grow with quality, not
right,
quantity, right?
right. Absolutely. And I, that's, so one of the downsides of a mastermind or going to the different boot camps and seminars is that, you can start comparing yourself to
Oh
everybody
yeah.
else. You're like, oh my God, these guys closed 1,000 units last year and took me 20 years. And you start comparing yourself to others. And that's something I think that is, like, you have to avoid. I mean, we're all guilty of that. Like,
Yep.
like trying to compare ourselves to others. But I really realized that, I mean, yeah, I get a lot of joy out of doing the syndications, and I have a ton of fun with, raising money and providing value. And we're like, we give real returns to our investors. We just have a fun time doing it. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, we want to do quality deals. We don't have to do these to eat, but it's a nice way to transition over time, like some of the smaller properties. And again, we've done it a long time. I have nothing but admiration for guys that just start out and go right into syndication. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I guess I wish I had the nerve and the confidence and the willingness to do it when I was younger. But on the other hand, what worked for me was that building it up and saying, hey, making all those mistakes, be it, from the way we bought something to the way we managed it to what we bought or how we, handled repairs or whatever the case is. But that's what worked for me. So when we get into a larger deal, and like right now, mid coronavirus pandemic crisis, we can exude confidence to our investors. And not every investor is confident. They all have different walks of
Mm-hmm.
life and backgrounds. But being able to to speak from experience with them as opposed to how we think it's going to go.
Yeah.
And that's what helps me sleep better at night.
Well, you're preaching my story, man. I've been on 2 podcasts within like the last week and a half. One with Alex Pardo, the Flip Empire, and then Aaron Bevins out of San Antonio. And I literally quoted in both of them, comparison is the thief of joy, because exactly what
Love
you're
it.
talking about, man. Going to masterminds, being on podcasts, and listening to someone like you saying,
Yeah.
I've got 1,000 units by the end of May, and that makes me want to run out of here and be like, we need 1,000 units by the end of May.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
that competitive nature of being an entrepreneur. And so I
Right.
appreciate you saying that because, look, you're by all means, everybody that's listening to this should look at your journey and be like, man, that's awesome. And consider you super successful for where you are. But even you were finding yourself saying, but I could be doing more because what this other person is doing. And most everybody out there probably would have told you like, no, dude, like you're doing just fine.
Yeah.
Like, calm
Yeah.
down.
Exactly.
And it's funny. It's human nature. So
Yeah.
just, don't get caught up in all that. We're sharing Jason's story right now because to help you, not so you can compare and be like, well, I don't have 1,000 units, so
Yeah.
I need to go out there and do this, or I need to syndicate. Hey, he started off with, 1 or 2 deals at a time using his own money. So, but I appreciate you bringing up, the coronavirus and where we are with that. So, obviously you've got a ton of units. How has this impacted you, and what does that look like since this all kind of
Sure.
bottom fell out a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah. So on the easy answer is that there's very minimal disruption.
Okay.
And what I've been saying all along for us, investing in Erie, Pennsylvania, we're a tertiary market located. For those that aren't familiar with Erie, we're located on Lake Erie, in between Cleveland and Buffalo. like directly north of Pittsburgh, right between Cleveland and Buffalo on a map. So we're about an hour and a half from each of those cities. We're not really a suburb of them, we are our own thing, but greater metro area of 320,000 or so, blue collar area. People's incomes were affected by the pandemic. A lot of people lost their income, but on the other side of that, our average rent for an apartment is not that much, in Erie. So if you have a complex where the average rent is say $700 a month, well, if the average tenant at that complex, makes, say $3,000 or $4,000 a month, they can afford the rent when they go on unemployment, and when this whole thing hit, we did not give the tenants the infamous, screw you, pay us rent. And that approach can work. And I don't want to criticize anybody else's way of doing business. Ours was more of, just sort of leading with compassion, reaching out to people, checking in on if they're okay. They know their rent's due. We had people that as April hit, checking in with them, and again, not pounding them about it, but like, hey, what's up? Just wanted to check and see where things are at. We hadn't seen your rent. And the vast majority of people that were late, it was a matter of waiting for their stimulus check or their unemployment. The vast majority know that as the economy opens back up and things start to come, try to inch back to normal over the coming months, that they're going to have income, and again, if they totally lost their job, they're still in an area where they can obtain other employment that will help them pay their bills. And so we've had some disruption. I mean, there are a few tenants that haven't paid, that have avoided the phone calls and things like that, but it's a very small percentage. I mean, out of the 850 tenants at this very second that we collect rent on and handle maintenance on, I've got 4 out of that are going to be a problem. So the rest have either paid, or we know the date that the payments are coming in,
So you talk about that you are purchasing another asset and you're closing by the end of May.
Yeah.
And I just interviewed Stephen Morris a couple of weeks ago, and he's out of Cleveland, Ohio. I think he owns it was 700 doors or something like that. And I saw him post on Facebook the other day that, he's buying another 80 something units.
Yeah.
Was there ever a concern about the value or the purchase price of where you're buying this asset, or the stability of where we're going to be because of the unknowing, just, hey, we don't know where we're going to be come the end of May or the beginning of June? Was that ever a concern for you?
To a certain degree, but not enough that it would cause us to abandon the deal or abandon our plan. And the reason being, my wife and I closed our first deal, which was a duplex, but in any event, it was still a week before 9/11.
Right.
And, and then we kept buying, and we bought through 2008, and we were able to take advantage of the economic opportunity at the time. And being that we're close to Cleveland, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, we look at those markets and say, well, certainly, single family homes, certain types of assets can be a problem. I certainly would be probably a lot more fearful in my end if I was midstream on a large value add, say in like Atlanta or Nashville or some larger growing market. But I have a little, bit of a contrarian view on growing markets. I think that, to me, the sexiness or the appeal of a deal for me has always been like, Erie is as boring as it gets. Cleveland can be as boring as it gets, and that's okay.
Right.
Because the value, the rent values aren't gonna. I mean, I guess you can never really predict anything. I mean,
Right.
I don't know that any of us would have thought we would be in the middle of this thing right now, but I don't know that the average rents in Cleveland aren't going to drop 50%. So I love a value add deal, but I think that I would not be projecting like, hey, we're going to take these rents from 700 to 1,500 in 6 months.
Right.
So for the deals we're buying, we are pushing the rents, but we did a very modest increase to still stay below the market average for competitive units. So for instance, the deal we're buying, the rents right now average out at about $650. The competitive rents for the same type of product in our market are high 800s. And all we're looking to do is push the rents $100,
Nice.
but by providing a similar product. So we didn't have to stretch the numbers, make all these things work, and make all these wild assumptions to make the deal work. So and we gave ourselves time to achieve that. So we said, hey, we would have a 2-year runway to be able to push the rents and be able to, complete that construction and things like that, to only push the rents $100. And so, I think that we looked at it from a very conservative standpoint and said, hey, in those first 2 years, we're going to cap our returns to our investors at 8% cash on cash. And then after year 2, we'll bump those up to what we're actually doing. So we're not setting ourselves up for, failed expectations.
Right.
Not setting ourselves up for a failed deal or anything like that. So, I know it's a long answer to,
Yeah, but I appreciate it, because that conservative, underwriting or analysis or just standpoint, whatever you want to put it, I think that's a consensus amongst, almost everybody that I've talked to right now, is just saying, look, hey, if you're a wholesaler, hey, go 10%, discount on the ARV right away. Yep. And then instead of trying to sell it at 75 or 78% of the ARV minus repairs, go down to 65 or 70. Yep. Same thing with flippers. I had Lee Carney on the podcast, and, he's flipped 7,000 houses. The dude is unbelievable. And he was saying the same thing, just be super conservative,
Yep.
tighten everything up. And you're saying the same thing about buy and hold, like, hey, you have every right to go into this deal and say, hey, we could be shooting for the high 800s. Yep. But we just want to go up to the mid 700s. And with being that conservative, you're only allowing yourself to exceed expectations. And if you don't, hey, if the bottom falls out and this gets even worse than it already is, which quite frankly, I don't know how it could be much more worse or awkward or just unprecedented than it already is right now. You're probably going to be right on the mark. And so that's a great way to approach this. For the people that are listening and maybe, buy and hold has not been something that they've looked at, or small multifamily, even large multifamily, what advice could you give to someone that has been either a flipper or a wholesaler only, and they're like, hey, this sounds great, and I want to start building passive income? What's the first steps that you would tell somebody to take?
Well, I think the first steps in looking to convert into passive income is just to read and reread whatever book or whatever you can to increase your knowledge. So whether it's rereading Rich Dad Poor Dad, we if you look at the cash flow quadrant, what quadrant do you want to be in, right? And the best place is to be able to make money while you sleep. And I think that buy and hold, to a large extent, does that, and so of course early on, if you're just buying something to manage it yourself, you're going to be putting in the work, but you're creating something that can feed you while you sleep, and so I think that's the biggest thing. So it's maybe a little bit of a shift in mindset. Like a duplex isn't going to give you that same bump as a nice cash out on a flip. Right. But I've also come around and shift my mindset where, 20 years ago, all I was going to do was buy and hold. But, look, I like a nice little wholesale fee or profit on a flip. So I've come around to incorporating that into my life. It doesn't have to be all or nothing, right? You can be a successful wholesaler and make a ton of income, but say, well, how long am I going to do this? And what am I going to do to set myself up to have another diverse stream of income? So I think, just listening to more podcasts, reading more books, and then just start networking and find other people that have, buy and hold assets and see how they've done it, and just kind of network and talk to people. And you're really, and that'll help build their confidence as far as, all right, now I've got a stack of cash. Well, what am I going to do with that? Am I going to be a wholesaler for the next 40 years of my life? Or am I going to take this equity and invest in things that I can, make money while I sleep? And that's really, in my mind, that's the key.
I always tell wholesalers, if you've been doing this for a while and you have quite a few under your belt, go back and look and see how those properties performed. Yeah. Especially the properties that you wholesaled to the buy and hold guys. like go back and see. I mean, there's, you know, probably a trail of, you know, hey, did they rent it out? Did they do a value add? Did they rehab the property? You know, was there a cash out refi at some point in time, or even just following up with them and saying, hey, you know, I sold you a property a while back, you know, how did it turn out? And
Yeah,
just, you know, some customer service there, but it's also educational to hear the different struggles and the tribulations that, you know, different investors have to overcome. Because look, at the end of the day, anybody that buys properties will tell you, hey, there's always a story that goes along with each one, right? They all can perform a little bit differently, you know, different unique tenants and processes. And it's, as much as we try to make it black and white and say, this is how it's going to go, they all kind of have their own little individual personalities and different things can happen. So,
exactly.
but Jason, hey man, I appreciate you taking the time today. Any final thoughts before we sign off?
No, I mean, I think, you know, for your listeners, just, you know, everybody's starts in a different place. And I think that, you know, just keep doing, you know, just keep fighting the fight. I mean, progress is better than perfection. So
Right.
that's really just one of the mantras I live by. You know, trying to perfect something is a fruitless endeavor, you know, so just try and be better than you were the day before, and you'll go far.
Absolutely, man. Well, we'll be thinking of you. Hopefully your closings in May go the way that they're supposed to go. Thank you for taking the time, and congratulations on getting back over 1,000 units.
Yeah.
That's beyond impressive, man. And I think the key thing here out of this interview is, you know, Jason and I both agree that, you know, masterminds are a huge asset to your business, but make sure if you're a part of a mastermind, you know, don't get in that comparison as a thief of joy. Don't compare yourself to other people. Just live your journey. And then also get out there and share your journey through podcasts. You never know who you're going to talk to and how it can change your life. Guys, that's our episode for this week. Hope you enjoyed it. Remember, if you're listening on iTunes, give us a 5-star rating. If you're watching on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. Thanks, guys.